It's November. And you know what I think of when I think of connecting FNaF to November? I think of probably the dumbest debate when it comes to the early game discussions for the series. Is FNaF 2 in November or summer? The debate is simply born from the fact that Phone Guy says, "Welcome to your new summer job," but the paychecks Jeremy receives are dated November. It can't really just be both where it's like, oh, Jeremy just works until November. The cutoff point for the end of summer is August, and November is a few months away from that and is definitely in fall. In fact, it's at the end of fall. So having a summer job that goes all the way to the end of fall doesn't really sound right, especially in a location that's only supposed to be open for a few short weeks. Now, there are many attempted lore explanations for what this actually means. There's kind of two camps of figuring this out. One idea is that Jeremy and Fritz are in fact working in summer, but Jeremy just doesn't get his paychecks until November, for whatever reason. And or despite Phone Guy saying that Jeremy's working in summer, he's actually working in November. Now there are some ground rules to consider to think about what's happening when. We know a decent amount of the events in some order. We know that William is the very first guard to work there compared to the second guard. The first guard is the one that's all suspicious and is investigated, and is presumably the reason they make such a huge stink about, oh, we can't have previous employees because the position just became available. And also, we see William there with a badge on his outfit. So William is the first night guard to work there. This also means Fritz Smith can't be an alias of William. Fritz is fired on his first day there. However, William not only makes it through his first week, but also gets to be promoted to a day guard before he's fired. So Fritz is not William, and we also know he isn't the second guard there. Because, you know, we play the only night Fritz is there, and there's no phone call for it. We also know he can't be Phone Guy, despite that being a popular theory, because if what Phone Guy says is true about not hiring previous employees, if Fritz is fired, he shouldn't be the Phone Guy that we see in FNaF 1. And obviously Phone Guy has been there way more than one day. Which then means by process of elimination, Jeremy should be the second guard there. Or at least that is the simplest possible way to connect things. Though while Fritz may not be Phone Guy, and Phone Guy is likely the same character between FNaF 2 and 1 at the very least, the Phone Guy in 2 is a little unique from the one in FNaF 1 and FNaF 3 in terms of how he is presented as a character. And I don't mean subtle little personality quirks, I mean more so that Phone Guy in FNaF 2 is presented a lot more in real time than the Phone Guys in 1 and the tapes in 3. When he talks about the incident with a yellow suit where animatronics reach their peak aggressiveness and everything becomes unstable, it's on night 6 when animatronics are at their most aggressive and we finally have the full roster of characters. Otherwise, you just have the characters going completely haywire, perfectly in time when Phone Guy talks about them reaching this level of aggressiveness where they might be hurting people. Not to mention his reaction to Jeremy being there on night 6 tracks with this being overtime. Jeremy is not supposed to be there. He's not scheduled to work that day, but he goes in anyway. That's why Phone Guy's like, "What on earth are you doing there?" One of the other things that implies Phone Guy is responding to Jeremy's shift in real time is that the exact night of gameplay after Jeremy's promoted to day shift, we play as Fritz. It is drastically more intuitive to say, yep, this is just the following day after Jeremy no longer works night shift. Not to mention, of course, that Fritz is literally labeled Employee 3. Too much of Phone Guy's dialogue and lines in this game are pointed and reactive to what's happening in real time in this continuity. And I know there's things people say like, oh, it's a generic opening line in the company statement about it being summer, and it's not actually summer, it's just like a thing on a script he's reading, which not only doesn't really fully make sense, but Phone Guy in FNaF 1, who actually does read off of a script, never says anything about a summer job. So either this is a separate script that Phone Guy in FNaF 2 is reading, which is not implausible, but also he never clarifies it is a script, so that's already an assumption that he's reading a script. But even within that, if they're writing a script for a summer job position, would that not imply the person being employed is working in summer? Why would they even write a script like that if he's supposed to be working in November? Why would Scott write the script like that if the implication at the time of him writing the lines for Phone Guy was that we were supposed to glean, oh, actually, this is a pre-scripted thing about being in summer, when in fact we're really in November? I know there's also the explanation that Jeremy is just listening to old audio, but why? What does Jeremy get out of listening to old audio? What does the story get out of it being old audio? Like, I guess it could just be like, oh, general information needed to perform the job and they didn't feel like recording more, but it's still a really weird narrative. But if it really was audio meant for summer, if this is a time gap and that's what's being explained here, why does it take so long for Fazbear Entertainment to solve this problem? I know you could argue the animatronics are just so dangerous at this point that they are killing employees and people trying to scrap the animatronics before they can be taken out, and eventually they just finally get it all through. But if that's the case, where is any audio or dialogue implying that's why we're here? Hell, why not task the night guards with trying to destroy them or scrap them? Also, why does it take so long to do so? As far as we know, all you need to be animatronics are like tasers and electricity and that kind of equipment. And that's not really that irrational of a jump or assumption to make for this company. Hell, if they're going to scrap the toys, just fucking shoot them. Like, why would Jeremy still need to be there so long after the case? And once again, this is never directly implied or stated. The only way you would come to this conclusion is if you make the initial assumption that Jeremy is listening to old audio and is just working at the place way after it closes. And a reminder, this would be way after it closes. The ending newspaper says the place just straight up closed after being only open a few weeks. So there's no like, oh, they closed then reopened. That's never explained or stated anywhere. We have no reason to believe they ever reopened. And once again, what does Jeremy working at a closed location add to the story at all? I feel like when Scott wrote the script of Phone Guy's audio, it had to be that we were actually listening to a manager talking about events that were happening day to day as the company was open before it closes. But I emphasize when it was written or made, because here's where, if we step back, we can start to see some weird gray areas. Now, while I've focused heavily on the whole, like, oh, Jeremy's just listening to old audio kind of argument, there are other ways the fanbase has made bids to try and give an in-universe rationale for the time discrepancy. Like, maybe Jeremy just didn't get his check until waking up from a coma after the bite, if he was the Bite of 87 victim. That, timeline-wise, could actually add up. Or it could be something like FNaF 1's statement about the company taking 90 days to respond to complaints when incidents happen. Let's say they're busy dealing with the aftermath of the whole chaos that runs down towards the end of Jeremy's work week, and he doesn't get his paycheck. And they're so busy that they don't send him a paycheck, and he just spends a while sending them messages like, hey, can I get my money? Guys, I never got paid. Guys! And then just a few months later, they finally get back to him and give him his money. Which is silly, but I mean, FNaF does have a lot of comedy in it, and this is the kind of humor Scott's written and used in these games, especially in this time era. Or it could be that as an employee working at Fazbear Entertainment, Jeremy could be suspect to whatever William did with the DCI. So those 3 months could be time where he's a suspect being investigated or even on trial before eventually being cleared and getting his money. But to be honest, I don't think there was an in-universe reason for why this happened. Or at least there is definitely a case for it being a very simple, really stupid reason. My suspect? FNaF 1's paycheck. Take a look at the 4 paychecks between the 2 games side by side and you'll notice a lot of overlap. While there are definitely changes, the FNaF 1 paychecks have bank codes that have been removed and the paychecks have been altered in dimensions to account for the lost dead space, but the coloration and the font and the date for everything is the same between the 2 checks. Except with 1987 clarified in the FNaF 2 paycheck, the money is more accurately calculated this time around, and also the names are matched to their appropriate player characters. And as of editing this, I've noticed a bunch of smaller things are pretty much identical, like page to the order of the little lock symbol with the little text to the side of it, and the background texture of the slips are all the same. Though there are also some differences I didn't notice, like the numbers in the top right have been changed between games, and also the border of the paychecks has changed. I think what happened here was Scott just took the original slips and edited them. All of these changes make sense under that. And now that he knows that he has a fan base that are doing things like looking at the paychecks, which Game Theory focused on a decent bit in that first video, he made necessary changes. If you were in the fan base at this point in time, you know that pretty much every set of numbers that existed at all at this point were being applied to phone numbers and places you would call and all that. None of this was ever intended, and it just bugged a lot of people, so I feel like Scott played it a lot more loose with numbers moving forward. This could explain why the bank code is seemingly missing. This also explains why the paycheck actually does line up with the minimum wage of 1987. It also makes it so you don't get an entire week's worth of pay when you do 1 day of overtime. And I could easily see Scott forgetting, oh wait, damn, I established that we're in summer in this game, and just leaving it with the dates of the first game. Especially given how rushed a lot of the things in this game are. Shadow Freddy and Endo 02 are some of my favorite examples of just the game not working the way it was meant to. The way these characters are supposed to work is that you'll look at them and they'll exist for like a few seconds before blinking away with this like little metal run sound. I mentioned this before in the Shadow Stand video, but you can see its take and explain this a little bit better. Not to mention there's subtle details like BB's buttons changing in between renders. Remember, this game was supposed to come out in December and instead came out a full month ahead of time in November, which actually means the in-game dates line up with the release dates. I don't know if that was intentional. Though, like I said, since this is a thing of FNAF 1, it does leave decent odds that Scott just left in the FNAF 1 dates on accident. Overall, this is kind of a nothing debate to start with. Like, all it really does is add this plot line that Jeremy just happens to work at a place way longer after it's closed. I'm willing to say that this is just a game set in the summer, and the paychecks are just wrong. Hopefully this will be a nice little simple video to tide people over until I finish the Charlie and Elizabeth Foils video. Happy Thanksgiving, everyone! Or maybe it passed, I don't know. Bye! Gobble gobble!